welcome to the Thought Room.
Mm.
I'm so excited for today. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. We had it on the schedule a couple times and we finally made it here in this room. And before we recorded, we shared in a little ceremony and a little playing of the singing bowl. And I just am feeling pure gratitude and excitement for you being
Mm.
here today. I usually start by telling people where we met. We met through a beloved soul ally, Nick Onken, who's also been a guest on this show. And you and Nick go way back, right?
We do.
Yeah, powerful soul brother. And the two of you just finished leading a retreat, correct?
Yes,
In
we did.
Tulum. It was in, where was it?
Yeah, we were just 20 minutes out of Tulum in Akumal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's called the Metamorpho.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the first of many
Mm-hmm.
experiences for a new legacy brand that we've kind of co-created. And my father started Magi Ministries, actually,
Wow.
geez, probably 30
Magi Ministries.
Magi
Such an
Ministries,
intriguing name. Yeah.
right?
Cool.
Yeah, so magi is plural, like the plural way of saying multiple magicians.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, being a child of magic, kind of, which we'll get into, but he started Ministries 30 years ago, and he just passed through into the great beyond last year.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of aligned with Nick, and we were like, wow, his mom went through actually a month after.
Right.
And so we're starting House of Magi, which is an immersive experience ministry. And so Metamorpho is one of the experiences, and it's a 5-day medicine immersion and very thorough and just such an honor. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
humbled
Mm-hmm.
to kind of be a co-facilitator, not only with him, but some pretty incredible facilitators from all over.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we just
Wow.
completed that.
Beautiful. And how do you feel on the other side of co-creating an experience of that magnitude, having people from all over come to make the pilgrimage to do that and be with you and these facilitators and healers? And you had a lot of sound medicine happening there, a lot of different musicians. And I'm sure the experiences were for people were just, breakthrough as they are at these experiences that we create. How was that? And how are you feeling now after putting that on?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it was, that saying that says, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, isn't that from The Field of Dreams?
Maybe. Yeah. I
It's
don't
one of
even
my
know.
favorite movies.
Great. I don't
Yeah.
even remember where it's from, but that's what feels resonant. And Nick and I have known that we wanted to create something like this, and just being in ceremony ourselves.
Mhm.
For me, I've felt the call for a long time to create something like this. And then I just needed to integrate.
Mhm.
I got to. It was a gift, right? So I was able to just kind of sit in my own medicine path for a couple years before kind of creating something on my own, and now, of course, with Onken. So it felt just surreal,
Mhm.
honestly, just to have so much trust of
Mhm.
individuals, like you said, coming
Mhm.
from all over the world that had never even been to Mexico.
Mhm.
Um, so we had a little bit of a mix. We had some people that had done really deep ceremonial work
Mhm.
throughout, their
And for
lives.
clarity, for those listening, are we talking about plant medicine, ceremonial work, or
Yeah, a little bit of both.
ayahuasca? Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, so there was some people that had sat, yes, with some deeper plant medicine ceremonies already, some that have done stuff that Ankin and I actually haven't even, participated in. And then we had an array of people that had just begun this path.
Mhm.
So, you know, it was so cool just to see the room, and what we co-created was quite a portal,
Mm.
and it was a story arc, so it begins um, with just really anchoring in the group and weaving together all different creeds, all different colors, all different classes. And to me, that's such a testament of the Hopi prophecy
Mm.
and the rainbow warriors and coming together. It says, when the earth is ravaged and the animals are dying, a tribe of people will come together from every class, every creed, every color, and they will make the earth green again.
Mm.
And they will be known as the rainbow warriors.
Mm.
So, in that space alone, it was so global.
Mm.
All of these ancestries and lineages were represented, and it felt so diverse and beautiful just to see so many different beings come together and just build trust and go to the depths and
Yes.
traverse the multiverse together
Yes.
was, yeah,
So
unbelievable.
special.
So special.
So special. I want to throw it back to your name for a second because
Yes.
I intuitively feel like this will be a really cool jumping off point. First of all, so cool. It's just like people with singular names. You have to be you have to be a cool enough person to pull off like a singular name, like Beyonce or whoever. Um, you're one of those people. You're just 11. And I know that you've shared briefly with me about your journey around your name and like your gender journey. And I would love if you would tell us all a little bit about what that's been like and you stepping into claiming that as your name.
Thank you. Yes. Wow. Yeah, it's been such a journey. I was walking in the world as Lynette Sine for very
Lynette Sine.
Lynette Sine.
Wow, that sounds like a very French name, is
It
it?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So my father is French Puerto Rican. My mother is Hispanic and Chinese. And so the Hispanic side is like Aguascalientes, Zacatecas is the
Mm.
native tribes. And so I think, as we all walk through these life path journeys, um, I grew up with parents that are magicians. So I just include that in because one, that's very unique. And
Mhm.
I'm sure we can put a pin in that. But
Yeah.
I was
We're
raised,
definitely gonna go there.
yes.
You know we are.
Yeah. So I'm like, we'll divert from the
Yeah.
magician part of it. But for a moment, just to kind of touch on, I was raised by such unique archetypes that helped build out other archetypes that were
Mm.
performers.
Hmm.
So when you say, yeah, exactly, like Beyonce or
Mhm.
Lady Gaga, my dad helped build out other kind of stage names for other people.
Hmm.
And so Lynette Sine was a stage name for me for a while. That's my first and middle name, my birth name and middle name. And so I had a very successful career as Lynette Sine in Los Angeles and just like
Doing
doing
what were you doing as
YouTube.
Lynette Sine? Yes, you were.
Yeah.
So,
So
like, can I still go to YouTube and search Lynette Sine and
yes.
I'll find you?
Yeah.
Do you look different?
I look very different.
Yes, I'm so excited for this.
Yes. There's a whole journey on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So about, geez, so I guess 2013 is when I launched my YouTube channel and it was very focused on beauty
Mhm.
and cosmetics and beauty products.
Yeah.
And yeah, I found a lot of success in that and it was a beautiful journey. And then there was this point in my story where the rug got pulled and I was leaving my marriage. I was married for a long time and
How old were you when you got married?
I thought it was a really good idea, Hallie, to get married during my Saturn return. I was 27 when I got married.
Oy.
And then I was married on paper for about 5 years. And yeah, and then that journey was coming to a close and it was very tumultuous. In fact, it was very domestically violent and pretty intense and toxic. And we were doing our best, two vessels trying to come together. I had met him in the church and knew him since I was 15 years old. And we kind of found each other on our path and had this beautiful love story that wow, I wouldn't be who I am today if it
Mm.
wasn't for my ex husband. And I honor him and revere the shadow work that we got to do together was pretty much the the cracking open, the
Mhm.
cracking open.
Mhm.
And that kind of launched me. I had a contract that was completing on the same month that I was leaving my marriage. So it's pretty much where it began. And it was, yeah, this invitation forward. I had reached the end of my rope. And I was like, okay, now what? I pretty much am at ground zero. And I don't know who I am, what I am, what is identity, what does that even mean? Who is Lynette Sine? What is my mission? What is my purpose? And not to take away from, what I created. I think it was really beautiful. All the experiences and YouTube and so many different rooms that I got to enter, and so much incredible success that I got to achieve through that space. And there was just this knowing, this deep seated inner knowing that this was not quite it. And so, in fact, I had just that same month, I had completed an 11 episode. This is before 11 came through, an 11 episode audiovisual podcast. And I had multiple guests. I even had recorded with like Gwyneth Paltrow and like,
Why did you choose the number 11? Just because you liked it? Like what, or it's special to you, or a lot of
well,
us?
well, yeah. So before that came through, so I had started the medicine path. So from there, I kind of like, yeah, kind of put everything on pause. That podcast I did just sits on a hard drive still. And I just stopped everything. Like my body was breaking down. I needed a break. And some conscious partnership coaches that were working with us through our marriage were going to Peru. They were going on a pilgrimage and they said, "We see you coming." And they were like, "We're going to be sitting with ayahuasca." And I was like, okay. I had felt the ping in my spirit and I had been studying a little bit about ayahuasca and what that was. And a lot of people, I think, come to this point of saying yes to some deeper work when they are at that moment, at that precipice of choice. And so the medicine path is what kind of started me in the shedding, in the full metamorphosis, where I was like, okay, everything kind of just started to shift. And yeah, I get chills even as I say it, because yeah, my first ceremony just kind of anchored me into a completely new essence. And I was still very feminine presenting, and I still always will be. It's just like a part of my path. I love beauty. I love the idea of glamour magic or tribal
Adornment. You're always
adornment.
adorned. I wanted to ask you about that too.
Yeah.
I always see you and you have your third eye painted or these beautiful little dots on the sides of your eyes. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that
Yeah.
that's a part of your expression.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So it's still very much a part of my essence, and all the ancients were using regalia and tribal markings to amplify their essence, right? To just really anchor them in. So while I knew I didn't really want to leave that, I knew I wanted to leave that side of the industry. So that kind of set me on a voyage to some, yeah, really deep inner work. And so as I continued to sit around the world and find new partnerships and uh, the reason why 11 came through was because it was a unique thing that happened. I actually had felt a new name coming. And I was actually living in a community home at the time, and I was integrating some other deeper ceremonial work. I was sitting with Bufo at the time. And so that kind of just completely that, I mean, ayahuasca was an initiation for sure. And I had sat many ceremonies of that, working with that. And then when I sat with Bufo, that's when like this explosion happened. And I was looking at myself in the mirror. I do a lot of mirror work. So you'll never see the gold over my third eye unless I've done my mirror work. So that's pretty much
Wow.
my one ritual every day is to meet myself as the self beyond the self. Like I always like to say the capital S self.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just for a moment, I love to go into this. If there's those of us listening, self included, that want to try a basic mirror work practice, what would you give us in that vein?
Well, do you want to do one right now?
Yes.
Because I also have an amulet.
No, you
I
don't.
have an amulet that I wear every day. It has moonstone. It's this gorgeous gold piece, actually from a
Wow.
brand that you guys can look up called Tribal Markers. My friend
Oh yeah,
Amir
yeah.
started it. So this amulet, and I'll have you help
Mhm.
me hold the
Mhm.
microphone.
Yeah.
This amulet actually carries gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Wow.
And so I can be your reflective surface. I can be your mirror right now. But I use an actual mirror. But, one thing that I love to offer others is this practice. So we can start something simple that I love to say to myself just to like really anchor me in is I am statements. So the
Mhm.
I am, um, for those of you listening, just saying mantra to yourself or to others, like looking them directly into the eyes, like I'm doing with you now, just saying, I am. And you can just start with that, just I am.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
am that I am.
I am that I am. Yeah.
And that's like where I really love to sit. And then I go, I am alive.
Mm.
I am awake.
Mm.
I am home.
I am alive. I am awake. I am home.
And then if there's anything else, like another I am statement that feels resonant for you that you'd like to call forward,
Yeah.
yeah, then feel free.
Ooh. Mm. This is hard. There's so many things. I love Ram Dass's statement of I am loving awareness. That one I love. Keeps me really grounded in the present. So I am loving awareness. And then there's another thing that I like to say to myself. It's not an I am statement, but it's an I statement. And I generally say it on medicines as well. And I say, I remember everything. I look at myself and I'll say, I remember everything. Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. So then I just take a little bit of this and then boop.
Thank you. I love this.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I was sitting in a bath one day. Well, you know what? Actually, so I had a dream and I'm a dreamseer. I've been seeing a lot of visions and dreams. I think that's part of just the Magi lineage that I come from as well, just being a dreamseer. And so I had a dream after a ceremony that I sat in that I had long hair at the time. It was like about just below my shoulders. And I was sitting in ceremony and I was purging. And you know the humility that comes just sitting in your own filth and just being there and being in it. And I was brushing my hair away. And I remember feeling death, honestly. I felt death in my hair. Yeah, you just got a haircut recently too.
Yeah. And it's been it's been a personality change for me too. I've never cut my hair short like this before. Maybe once in childhood, but I've always had this long maiden hair. And this fall, I got this insatiable urge. And it was almost alarming to me because I was like, you don't really want to cut that. Your long hair is so beautiful. And just in the same way that, a medicine calls us, like ayahuasca called me, and it was very strong. It was very clear. There was no arguing. That's what this call to cut my hair felt like. And I felt the same way. And then everywhere that I went afterward, people kept saying, wow, you look so much lighter. You look so much lighter. Yeah. So the death in the hair.
Yes.
And this idea of our old DNA that has been shed still being attached to us.
Totally.
Yeah.
And these are receptors, every single hair on our head is almost like an antenna, right? So it captures so much of the energy around spaces. And so I was brushing away my hair and then I closed my eyes and I was just in this meditative state. And I met myself, my future self, and I got goosebumps again saying it. And I had a shaved head. And I was doing this tribal dance. Like I had my arms and then I was like, I was
beckoning
literally
yourself.
beckoning myself, calling myself forward. And I was free in my body and my spirit, my soul. And it was I was like seducing myself forward.
Yes.
And I saw myself with a shaved head. And I never in my lifetime have been like, oh, I should shave my head ever. That hadn't been a thought that had come through. Maybe a really random thought of just seeing other people do it, but it wasn't something that felt like, that needed to come forward. So that was in a ceremony. And then I had this dream and I was sitting in a mandala of flowers. There was like a circle and there was all these beautiful beings sitting around me in a circle. So like two circles and circle of flowers that I was sitting in the middle of and a circle of, almost like threshold guardians. And it was a head shave ceremony in my dream. So this was about a month before. And I then manifested that dream. So at the time I was living in a community home and it was right at the height of the pandemic. And so a bunch of us had gathered together and we were living in a gorgeous home in Venice, California. And I felt so safe to ask for support. I said, guys, there's something coming through. There's a new name and I hadn't anchored in with the name yet. And there's a ceremony and can you guys help me co-create this? And of course, all hands on deck. They were like, absolutely. And my birthday is February 11th. So it was all there. And then and I wanted to really just make this like.
You really set it up for us.
Yeah. I was born with 11 toes.
Yes.
There it is.
Yes.
And so I was sitting in a bath, and it's like, it should be so obvious, right? But I'm sitting in a bath, and there's another story, and there's other podcasts that I've shared this on. So yeah, feel free to get more context or just more of the storytelling because I love to tell stories. But yeah, there was more to this, but essentially I was sitting in another bath, and because when it really, yeah, maybe I should just tell the story. Okay.
Tell it.
Okay. So after I had kind of completed my marriage, I ended up in a partnership with a woman, this gorgeous woman that when we had first started dating, um, I had this weird story, Hallie, where like I had 11 toes, but no one knew. Like literally, I'm really good at misdirection because being raised by magicians, real good at misdirection. So
I bet the partners in your life have really loved that.
I mean, right. But I mean, with the toes thing. So I
Yeah.
just didn't want anyone to know because when you're born with something different, right? When you're born different, growing up, I would see my brother had 10 toes, my mother had 10 toes, and my father had 10 toes. So it just took one kid to bully me. And they, of course, were just like, oh, it's cool. It's like your unique little glitch in the matrix. My dad always, when I came through, my dad was like, you're an angel. You're here on mission. I was waiting for you. My dad and I are like very interstellar. And I have this really deep soul connection. And so he always raised me in the awareness that you are a hybrid. Like you're here with a very specific mission. I knew as soon as you came through. So I was never, like they even tried to do surgeries and stuff to remove it. I think there's a very specific agenda. That's my own conspiracy mind, to just keep people looking very similar in the universe or in this planet anyway. And so, yeah, it took one kid to bully me and say like, "What the heck is that?" And just kind of because it's unique looking, and I'll give you just a visual.
Yes.
You've seen my toes before, but
Have I?
I think I have like 5 regular toes on this
Yeah,
side, on my
yeah,
right side,
yeah.
and then on my left, I have
Oh,
this a cute
yeah.
little twinkle toe. So it's
Yeah. I love that
one
you painted it a different
yeah,
color.
these are my twinkle toes. I
Oh.
definitely need a pedicure, but I've been living in the jungle, basically being barefoot. So I have one toe that actually has 2 bones underneath, and it's making like a little peace sign,
Wow.
and there's 2 nails on this
Uh-huh.
toe. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have 11 toes if you look under an X-ray.
Wow.
And so, but it looks unique. It's not like it's not actually like 11 singular toes. There's like one little encasing actually for
Mhm.
2 bones.
Wow.
So now I like look at this foot and I love it. But my whole life, I literally hated my feet.
Mm.
I didn't do karate. I didn't do yoga. I hated going to the beach in certain cases or the pool or anything that required being barefoot. So essentially, I was hiding. I
Mhm.
was dimming to fit in.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I was in this partnership with this woman, and I had dated people for sometimes upwards of like years that didn't even know because I would just
That
cover.
didn't know about your toe.
Yeah, because I would just cover like this. And then when you see regular 5, then it's called mirror neurons.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then you just automatically equate the other foot. So I would just like never get foot rubs or never get
Wow.
pedicures or anything I could do so people didn't hear this or find out the secret.
Yeah.
The one
The
little
real you.
secret, the real
They
me.
didn't find out the 11.
So crazy. And I had never equated it to 11 until this moment. I was in a bath with my ex-girlfriend and I was like, my heart, I hadn't alchemized this story. So now you can feel my nervous system is completely
Wow.
because I have I've
Yeah.
alchemized the story. But at the time, I had a lot of shame, a lot, like to the point of not only paranoia, but almost like, yeah, feelings of like major anxiety. And so I'm in this bath with her and she was like, what's going on? I was like, I have to tell you something. We had been dating for maybe like, I don't know, a few weeks, month. And I was like, I have the story that I was telling myself at the time was I have a deformed toe.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And she's like, what? Let me see it. And so it literally took me about 15 minutes, maybe 15 minutes to like finally get the courage
Wow,
to like
yes.
place my little foot in her lap.
Yeah.
And so I placed my foot in her lap and
What was
I
going through your body?
like literal panic.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, like
thank
she's
God I was in warm water.
yeah, yeah.
But I tell this story because it was so impactful. And thank you, Emmy Bush, for helping me get through this really cool threshold because it was a world spinning on its axis moment. I
Mm.
put my foot in her lap and she looks and she stands up and she puts her arms up and she goes, "You're an 11." And it was
Uh,
like my whole world went,
wow.
And I was like,
She just
her
cheered it.
enthusiasm her
Yeah.
enthusiasm completely changed. And listen, my ex-husband had, like, webbed toes and, like
Yeah.
but it's these beautiful beings, right? Like, God reflecting back, like,
Yes.
spirit reflecting back to you through another avatar. And I just looked at her and my whole world changed in one moment. And so, yeah, it's kinda, like, hard to tell this whole story without this shorter
Mhm.
story because that was when it began of this,
Yes.
"Oh, okay." And she was so in her body, she's a major burner and just, like, very fluid and just, like, very open and, being naked, and so
Mhm.
she helped me come back from a very domestically violent marriage back into my body.
Yeah.
So that resulted into even being okay with my feet,
Mhm.
And, she was actually the one who kind of started pushing me. She's like, "Hey, at your next birthday party." So this was the year before the head shave ceremony. She was like, "At your birthday party, I think around the fire, we should tell this story, and I think it'd be really good for you to share your feet with all the people there that love you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I mean, this is, like, such a big initiation for me." And she's like, "I know, babe, I think it's gonna be really good." So I did. That happened. So it was like this slow boil, and then I started sharing online, and then I shared on my YouTube channel. So it just kinda started this cracking open. So now fast forward, I'm planning this head shave ceremony. I'm feeling this new name coming through, and we have to address the obvious here. Okay, I know there's a show called Stranger Things, and there's a character named
Mhm.
11. I've never seen the show. And so I think that's why I kinda just, like, missed it because I kinda heard about this character. So one day I was sitting in a bath. The bath seems to be an anchor point for me, and I had my
Me
feet
too.
feet up, and I was kinda, like, moving the faucet with my left foot, and
As
I'm
one does.
as one does, getting more hot water in there, and I'm sitting there and just in communion with myself, and I had this galaxy light going on actually too, which is kinda cool to set the scene. And I was going, "All right, spirit, I know there's this new name." And just to address too, I was living in a home where Blue, I don't know if you know, Blue was living in the home at one point, and I have my friend like Zahara, and there was Azria. So all these beautiful women were such templates for me, for this new name coming. So I had kind of talked with them and I was like, "Yeah, I feel this new name. And is this me just like losing my mind?" I felt like I was actually going through like an identity crisis, of course,
Yeah.
because I was.
Yeah.
And I also was like working with a therapist at the time because I was like, "Am I mentally ill? Like, is this me doing too much medicine and not integrating? Is this something to be concerned about?" These are all just very honest, inquiries. And I'm sitting, and I sit in the mirror for a long time and I'm just kind of like grieving because I'm like, okay, Lynette is getting put on a shelf. What does this mean? Anyway, so then sitting in the bath, and then it just landed. It was like, I am 11. What? And there was this whole thing with this show, right? And everyone asks me, "Oh, like 11 from Stranger Things." And I'm like, I've purposely never watched the show almost because the being has a shaved head as too. And so now here's what's fun. I've actually really sat with this over the last even couple months. I'm like, I think I am that character actually because they have the same kind of like I guess they're like a magical little character.
Yes.
And
Special.
I'm like, "What?
In a way, I didn't think about it until now, but even some of the facial features,
Isn't that
there's like
weird?"
this young wiseness. Like you
Hmm.
have a youth about you, but there's just so much wisdom, and I feel like the character in that show also
And
embodies
you
that.
get to enlighten me. I'm like such a sacred rebel that I've never watched it
Mm.
because 1, I don't wanna have any
A sacred
expectations.
rebel.
So I'm like everyone's like, "Have
Of
you seen it?
course.
You have to see this show." And I've seen one scene because one friend one time was like, "Okay, you just have to see this scene." And, I saw that the little character is, like, moving things with their mind, and that was the one scene that I saw.
Mhm.
And now I've been like, "Hey, y'all, I didn't get royalties for this show, but maybe y'all are just kinda, like, mapping my consciousness and then, like, creating story." But then it works for me
Yeah.
because, it just happens to work. But I've had, like, this resistance because 'cause I'm
Mm.
like, what is that?" So it almost yeah, it almost detracted me from going by 11 because I was like, well, this already exists." And then I consulted with a few friends, and we did a whole prayer ceremony we're in. I was like, "I just feel like I am 11, like, that my toes came before this show, let's be honest." And so, yeah, that's just, like, a little cheeky, funny thing, but it's
Mhm.
just true. So, I feel like
Yeah.
I am 11. Like,
Yeah.
it anchored in, and then once we did the head shape ceremony, so every single being took a lock of my hair, they cut it with scissors first, and It was pretty much the deepest, and Onken was there too,
Mhm.
and just, like, the people that really were standing for me at the time, and I knew also what was coming forward to take it back to the gender identity was I knew I wanted to have, you know how people have gender reveal parties? I was like, "Yeah, fuck that. I wanna have a non-gender reveal party." So I was like, "Everyone wear rainbow," or, and some
Nice.
people did, and I was like, "And I want rainbow flower petals, and
Mhm.
I wanna step into this awareness of non-binary." The Western world is kind of coming online too, and then as I've been studying my indigenous roots, really sitting with two-spirit
Yes.
and being like, "Okay,
Talk about
this
two-spirit.
is interesting." And just the idea of, a one and a one, and then it's almost like this forward pathway through it. And then also, yeah, it just is like, I feel like I have always been very young energy, and the yin comes through sometimes and very feminine presenting. And then I was very triggering for a lot of people when I was very feminine presenting and had the long hair. And so people just didn't understand, like, I can be quite fiery or I can be very strong, and it was very repelling, and I am a manifestor, so I have that
Wow.
auric
This
field too.
this is resonating 1,000% with
Really?
me.
Really?
Yes, yes, and it has shifted since I cut my hair.
Really?
Yes, because there's something more, I could think non-threatening and, like, a little endogenous, but also powerful, like, the integration of the masculine, where when I was in sort of that hyper feminine avatar expression, I'm still incredibly feminine,
Absolutely.
but, that young maiden sort,
Mhm.
it was just how do I wanna put it? It's like a lighthouse for the projection of desire,
Mhm.
sexual desire from others, jealousy from
Mhm.
others, and when you're a light at anything that you do, whether it's
Mhm.
something you're consciously doing or not, it really agitates the shadows awake in people, even if those shadows look like what we would call positive desires, like affirmations of your physical beauty or whatever, you would think that's a nice thing. But when I'm sure you can relate to this, when you're constantly fielding the projection of sexual desire,
Mhm.
this was the loneliest decade of my life was my
Wow.
20s because of course there's a lot of privilege with being conventionally beautiful, right? Let's not
Mhm.
deny that. However, there's a whole other set of things that I think people should be really compassionate to or could be. The invitation is you could be. I think about supermodels and stuff like that. And, that's a different level, especially when you have a career that's based around the way that you look. But when you walk into a space and every single being, male, female, whatever, is interfacing with you in a way that the lens that they're seeing you through is leading and it's not your energy, it's the way that you look, it can create a very isolating experience. Like, we're talking about, like, people backing their cars up the wrong way down a one-way street to follow me and yell
Wow.
things at me daily in New York, and, cool, after a while, that gets really old, and it starts to kind of create this resentment and this anger. At least it did in me, I'll own that, and I wanted to just tell everybody to fuck right off and let
Right.
me, like, live my life. Um, and then it also created this really large distortion for me, which I've only been able to effectively heal, I would say, honestly, in the last 6 months, which was around female friendship,
Mm.
and never really fully feeling safe because
Mhm.
whether it was my projection or not, sensing something in the texture of the air between myself and the other woman that it was just like, you're saying all the right words that you're excited for me or my life or, what we're sharing, but there's something that's unsaid here. And so that's on that part I've only really been able to heal with meeting my best friend, Danny, who's like the love of my life, like the
Aw.
absolute love of my life, has changed my life completely and helped me to heal that part. And in doing so, um, the beauty doesn't need to be like a knife anymore,
Mhm.
and I think the shadow side of that for me was, okay, so you walk into a space, I'm in my 20s, there's this immense power when everybody's staring at you, It's like, what can I do with this? Also, because if I'm gonna have to put up with what everybody's flinging at me, I'm gonna use all the tools that I can to navigate this world and without berating myself, that created some patterns of subconscious manipulation for me
Absolutely.
of people, especially men. And it was like, well, if you're gonna do this to me, yeah, I'll go on a date with you. Probably not gonna call you back or what, in my head. And what a horrible thing. What a horrible thing. And this is what creates a lot of wounding in dating and relationships and how we want to blame each other. I think what's missing is just more understanding of the other person's perspective, no matter who they are, what they believe in, what you think they're doing. It's like if there's a resistance, there's an opportunity there for you to understand more.
Mhm. Wow. I love this segment of the podcast.
Me too. Me too.
Wow, so well said and articulated. Thank you. And you just even anchored in so much more for me as well as of course I've thought these things and you know how thoughts just like millions come in and out and yeah, I mean, I had my period at 11 years old
Of
and then I
course.
would yeah, exactly. There's that number again. And that was when I knew. I was starting to get catcalls immediately when I started my period as a young vessel.
Mm.
And I was going, "Oh, okay, so I guess I'm attractive and, to much is given, much is required," is what I have
Ooh,
found.
yes,
And
yes.
my father always said, "I knew you were gonna be beautiful because my mom is stunning. My dad
Mm,
is gorgeous and
mm.
was gorgeous. He, passed through, and so all of my ancestors are just absolutely gorgeous, and so he said, "I knew you were gonna have a very unique walk because I knew you were going to be gorgeous." And so my parents did a really good job of kind of they're performers. So
Mm.
I grew up in the lights, the camera, the action, almost very much bringing that forward and using that as a tool, to, yeah, of course, work with that. And so I watched, my dad in cosmetics too, getting ready for stage, and my mom just total knockout in
Mm.
these gorgeous costumes. And so it was just a part of our path. And then, yeah, to kind of like really just walk in the world and be like, okay, exactly what you're saying, especially with female friendships, that has been
Yeah.
my forever
Yeah.
life work
Yeah.
because I have felt forever that I dim because I'm like,
Yeah.
if I go all the way, what are people gonna think of me? Because I already
Mhm.
have a very powerful personality
Yep.
and I have this avatar. What's gonna happen
Yep.
now? And in the beauty industry, that was what I was infiltrated with because all these beauty influencers are just, like
Mhm.
gorgeous. So I
Mhm.
was in that industry and I would call my mom crying and be like, because I am not just the avatar. And so I would be like, this all sounds really well and good, or this all feels very, very, it's just so the depth, the lack of depth in those spaces was so challenging for
Mhm.
me,
Confronting, yeah.
confronting. Because I was like, I want to just sit in circle. Like I was craving ceremony
Right.
in those spaces. And that's why I think there was so much dissonance in my spirit. And so yeah, when the activation of and I had had short haircuts before actually in my 20s and I was very fluid and I was kind of I've been traversing the LGBT spaces for like 17 years. So kind of like removing, yeah, the long hair and stepping into more androgyny started very young actually. I was wearing my little brother's clothes and running around on the land as a kid and just very I was like Mowgli.
I
And
so see that.
I was
That's
totally
amazing.
but yet my parents, were still it's been an interesting walk. Um, so yeah, to kind of like circle it back, I would just say, yeah, that act of shaving my head and then looking at myself in the mirror afterwards, because you're stripped to nothing. It was that Neo in the Matrix moment
Yes, yes.
where, and Ram Dass talks about this too, is like becoming nothing,
Yeah,
becoming nobody rather.
yeah.
And that was that moment for me. So 11 came through, and I call 11 a walk-in. It was not from me that I
Mm,
could not give myself enough credit, right? It was
mm,
just completely spirit-led, and I feel like a complete other essence walked in and was like, "We're ready to take this on now."
mm,
Lynette's and I couldn't carry it.
mm.
This next decade, I'm gonna be 36, but this next, you were saying your 20s, same thing. It was challenging. The 20s can be really interesting, and now
Oh,
I'm kind of
man.
anchoring into my form and connecting back with my womb and my cycle. And ironically, stepping into non-binary has taken me right back to the navel and my origin.
Mm.
So that's when the deep womb healing started. And
Mm.
so ironically, it has helped alchemize almost the yin and the yang to create this beautiful symbiosis. It's not,
Mm.
I don't want to be a man.
Mhm.
Just to
Mhm.
be clear, I
Right.
don't want to be a man right now. I mean, I don't think that that's going to come through me. That's not really where I'm at. It's really creating this balance. And I think that a lot of us actually, um, gender is really a social construct, I believe. And when you look at tribal culture, it's less about that. You know, there are
Mhm.
beings in many different cultures throughout
Mhm.
all time in history
Mhm.
that are just these kind of, there's multiple genders that are actually honored in different tribes and stuff. And so when I started studying that, I was like, oh, okay. In the Western world, it's just very binary.
Right.
This box or this
Will
box.
you talk about two-spirit? You mentioned that earlier, and I think that's a really cool just thing to sprinkle in here about what that actually means.
Yes. So I preface always this conversation with that I am a student still of this curriculum because it's very new for me. I almost every time I get asked, especially more recently for podcasts, I feel this anxiousness that comes up because I'm like, oh, I feel like almost
Mm.
inadequate because
Mm.
it's so brand new to my path. And how cool.
Yeah.
How cool. So I always preface that because I know that there's like a lot of people that have a lot of a deeper awareness of this. But in my awareness,
Mhm.
it is a being that is represented in a lot of different tribes that has access to both energies, right?
Mhm.
And not everyone resonates with that.
Mhm.
So that's just true. And so it's a being that really just it's like a third gender. And there's multiple, like I said, but in different there's different names in different tribes. I'm not going to even get
Right.
into all the different cultures because there's so many different names that they call this.
Right. But the
But
idea is
the
kind of like
idea,
the masculine and the feminine energy embodied in one singular vessel.
yes,
Cool.
yes, exactly. And so, yes, while I have the technology of the womb, what a gift, what an honor.
Oh,
I
I
am
like how you
not
said that, the technology of the womb.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're carrying this a portal, the
Yeah.
space of no thing where everything is created. So
Yeah.
I will always identify as a woman.
Mhm.
So I think there's this misconception and I do here's the truth, Hallie. I have
I
on
love the truth,
Instagram
11.
I love like the kind of being the agitator. So do I get
Oh, you
offended?
do?
Just a little. I like it a little bit. Not to be like cruel, but it's like I like to be a pattern interrupt.
I think that's
So
why we're sitting here.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
why we
yeah.
originally, like, really locked in. And so, yes, they, them, thou, I've been
Mhm.
saying. Like, we
Thou.
always used to say thou,
Yeah, that's true.
and so we've just forgotten. So to me, it's coming back into the sweet remembrance, and,
Hmm.
I don't get offended, I have current partners right now that are, still don't really get it, and they're still saying she a lot, and there is a little thing in my spirit that feels a little bit of a, "Huh." 'Cause here's what I know. When people do nail pronouns and they just get it just perfectly, and I'm watching the Gen Z totally gets it.
Cool.
I've been around a lot of Gen Z kids and they're just like, "Oh, they da da da," and it just flows out of them like it's not awkward
Right,
because we have more programming
right.
so it feels awkward for certain of us to say they. Now, mostly I refer to everyone as they,
Hmm.
just because I think we're multidimensional, multifaceted creatures, and, I think we're gonna watch in our lifetime a lot of this stuff shift as we're already watching.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, the fact that you can actually get this on your passport now says a lot, even for our culture in America. So, and I look forward to that happening on my passport, truly, because it is this, you know, and it's really challenging too because my family just completely does not understand at all.
Right.
So there's, questions of mental illness
Mm.
and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh
Mm.
man. So I was working with a non-binary therapist because in my experience, you cannot lead anyone anywhere you yourself have not gone.
Right.
So I think, yeah, being around a lot of spaces that kind of encompass more of these beings that do get this work,
Mhm.
has felt really good on
Yeah.
my nervous system because then I don't feel like I have to explain myself.
Mhm.
And I'm so happy to be a wayshower,
Right.
and I'm still in process.
Yes.
So that's why I sometimes
Yes.
hesitate a bit 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I don't have all of the codes downloaded quite yet."
I
But
love your willingness and your openness to be a way shower, and I hear when you're talking about these things that are new, they are they're awkward not because 'cause they're awkward because 'cause they're new, and
mhm.
anytime something is new, it's like, "Okay, how do we, like, ride this bicycle together?" And so I love the openness and the invitation that you're offering to people to bridge the gap and the patience, and also the self-care to resource with people where you don't have to be managing that all the time, and I
Yeah.
think that's where a lot of I mean, any I was gonna say groups, but that puts us othering again, but, sometimes we collect ourselves in these little constellations, and we feel like we wanna educate people about our position, and we can get really exhausted, like, doing that is exhausting, it takes energy, and so we need to find that beautiful balance
Yeah.
between, like, resourcing ourselves and being the way showers and making sure we're constantly doing our checks on ourselves, not to be leading from an angry space,
Totally.
because the angry space is a space of projection and blame, and I'm not saying that anger isn't warranted or
Mm.
valid, and I need to state that very clearly.
Mhm.
Anger can be a powerful way of shifting things, and it's also really important, like you said, to always go back to yourself and resource and find this grounded, rooted place of genuine love and understanding, and to not pour too much energy into the places that just
Mm.
aren't ready to get it yet. Because there are people that want to hear every single person's message that are ready to make the changes. And I think it's so easy to get distracted in a world that feels broken in so many of these ways. And what I'm constantly recalibrating to and praying for is like, just show me the people that are ready for this now, ready for this now. What I have at this current moment, in this
Mhm.
current iteration now, show me those people and I will light the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel that so deeply. Yeah, thank you for shedding light on that too. That really hits for
Mm.
sure. And
Mhm.
that's exactly the dance. And it is a choreography. It's a new choreography. I don't know if it's necessarily it's a new choreography for us as a collective now. I don't know if it's a new concept, right? It's a remembering of the ancients.
Mhm.
So when I've gone down my rabbit holes, because I love to go down those, I am the rabbit on the Chinese calendar too. So I love to go down these rabbit holes. And then when I started, because all of a sudden I just decided I needed to move to Mexico.
Mhm.
So I had this just knowing I needed to get out of Los Angeles and just kind of go on this path because I was starting to see that maybe I was also being influenced too much so by some of the spaces that, or other beings in my life that were already kind of on this path and really integrated into it.
Mhm.
So I was like, I just need to walk this path by myself to know
Yeah.
that this is really honest because
Mm.
I was starting to get nervous, right? I was like, oh, is this me having imprints of others? Because that could be also not
Right.
helpful in
Like
this path.
exiting one box and kinda going into
Right.
another.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let me go to Mexico, which is quite a machismo culture. And mi mamá es de Mexico. So I'm actually learning non-binary Espanol. So not
Mm.
ella or ello, it would be ella or bonite instead of bonita or bonito,
Ah, okay.
hermane. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to a culture where this is like, again, very uncommon. But I was able to just sit with myself for, a little over a year now. And with that, I was able to go, wow, yeah, this is just very honest, like this is not because I have outside influences or anything of that sort. So I've done my best to kind of, yeah, walk this path. And then what I wanted to bring up was as I was in Mexico, of course, I'm just in deep study and I follow that proverbial or, metaphoric white rabbit. And it took me down this study of the Mayans
Mm.
and the temples there, and I was living in Tulum, so there's these, pyramids. Living in Tulum is like living in Giza.
Mm.
The polarity is strong. There's deep spirituality happening amongst, complete, I mean, call it what you want, colonization or whatever, right? This gentrification that's happening and a lot of wealth being exchanged. The same thing is happening, around all sacred sites. The commodification of these sites and with that though, I was studying the temples and I was studying the pyramids there, and of course, boom, I come across this entire thesis about these beings that had separate burial like chambers in like in Chichen Itza and different temple sites there that had 11 fingers or 11 toes. And I about
Whoa.
lost my shit. I was like, wait, what? And then I start studying and I'm like going down this.
I remember everything.
Yeah, exactly. 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 And I just was like, what? Oh, and then and then I come across this Nat Geo, whole article and the Aztecs as well. Like it's across every different culture that there were these beings that had multiple fingers or toes. It wasn't just even 11. There was, 12, sometimes upwards of 15. And so then I started going back and back. And they were often, I don't know if you study, like we're gonna go down a little bit of
Let's do it.
a fun little thing. Do you follow Gaia?
TV,
Yeah.
Gaia TV, sometimes.
Okay. And I don't really follow it too much anymore, but there's this, awareness of Anunnaki, right? And I actually have
Yes.
Nefertiti tattooed because this was
Whoa.
a deep
That
initiation
is
for
an
me.
awesome tat.
Thank you. And so they say Nefertiti was also Anunnaki, right? They had the elongated skulls. So, and they were quite tall. We're talking 7, 8 to 9 feet tall. They were the giants. They were always androgynous and oftentimes had 11 fingers or 11 toes. So I've just been on this
Come on,
pursuit and I'm
dude.
like, what the hell is going on? So I'm just I feel like Will Ferrell in Stranger Than Fiction,
Yeah.
kind of like the story's just being written and I'm just like capturing it in real time.
That resonates immensely.
Right? And so I've kind of just been like, all right, spirit, I'm in full trust and full surrender. And it feels like, I feel like this whole, right? Like life is just a video game. We're holding the game controller. And so I want to live a real great story. And so whether I'm manifesting these things to come forward or they just really were true, who even knows? I'm having a great ass time. That's what I know. That's
Yes.
what I know.
And we get to choose,
Yeah.
right? Like we get to select the story. I've often thought that people go, well, what if all this, the way that you're entraining your thought is a delusion? I was like, this is exactly the delusion I want to live in then,
Yes.
because it feels closest to my truth,
Right.
to my truth.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
100%.
that's where I'm at. So that's why we get along great
Yes.
because I'm like,
Wow.
exactly.
What an amazing story. Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. There was, when we were talking about gender, dating, relationships, there was a question that came up where I wanted to hear about. So you were married. This is a person you met in the church.
Mhm.
Yes. And then at what point were you like, I think I could date women too? Or like,
Mm.
I would love to hear, because I have a story of how I blossomed in that. And I was I was a part of the acro yoga community
Oh,
in New
beautiful.
York. So when I first moved to New York, I had 0 friends. I didn't really, well, I had 1 friend, but I didn't really know anybody in New York at all. I was coming out of a 3-year deep relationship where I was living in Canada. I was dating a cop. We had a house and a dog, and I
Wow.
was a school teacher. And yeah, just like in this, you know,
There it
very
is. Just laid
northernmost
out.
city in the snow in Edmonton. And I just completely had a quarter life crisis after the death of my stepbrother to
Mm.
drugs.
Mm.
And it's, he and I weren't exceptionally close, but it is that idea of like somebody in your family is there one day and
Wow.
then they're gone. And you will never see them again. And it really slapped me awake. I had a major identity crisis that summer. I didn't know who I was. I was kind of bumping around into walls. I felt like you talk about like a walk in, like feeling like a different personality. It felt like I had woken up out of a coma, but sort of into one. And it was like I was trying to fit myself in my life. I was waking up every day feeling, okay, this is my partner. Okay, this is my job. Okay, you love this stuff. Like you love this stuff. And I was just like, why am I not feeling that inside? Like this is so scary. What's happening? And I think it was like 3 or 4 days before I was supposed to start teaching. I taught at a Waldorf school.
Wow.
And it was gonna be my 3rd year with these children. I had deep relationships with the family and the children, and I was just hollow. I was just a shell. I'd prepared all my plans for the year. I had set up my classroom. I had put all the name tags on the desk. Parent teacher night was in, like, 2 nights, and I emailed the school and I was like, "I can't do this. I'm so sorry."
Wow.
And it was like when I sent that email, it was one of the most courageous and fucking scariest things I've ever done because I knew those families were gonna be heartbroken. I knew those kids adored me and I adored them. And also knew I was not gonna be in integrity standing in front of them the way that I felt, and they deserved a shining pinnacle in front of
Mhm.
them, and I needed to go do my work, and that was the initiation. So, I decided to send that email, and of course, they were just like, "We need you. You're leading our first graduating class through. You're on 10 committees. Come over for tea. We'll talk about this." And I said, "I'm so sorry. I can't come over for tea. My will is not strong enough to face all of you that I love so much and have to say this again, and I need to go on a grief leave." And so I made that decision and talked to my partner at the time, and he said, he was like, "Well, what do you wanna do?" And I was like, "I have no idea. I need some time." He's like, "Well, we have enough money. It's gonna be fine." And he worked odd shifts because he was a police officer, and I remember getting up, after I had a dream, and in the dream, there was just you talk about seeing and predicting things in the dream. That shit's my jam. It's like happens to me all the time. I'll dream events a day before they happen or 6 months before they happen. And there was this feeling in the dream that there had been a breach in trust in my relationship. And I thought I was being a little paranoid, as one does before they're really starting to learn the validity of their intuition. Because, mind you, I'm probably 24 at this time. And when he got home, I sat him down on the couch and I said, "We need to talk." And I said, "I understand there's been a breach in trust in our relationship." And he exhaled deeply and he said, "Who told you?" And
Wow.
this is my partner of 3 years. It hit me like a ton of bricks, but also not because I had known and just very calmly asked him to just collect some of his things and to give me space because not only did I just turn down my job, I now had no way to pay for my life, going from a lot of abundance to like nothing overnight, lost this family member, don't know who I am, don't know what I'm doing. And, to his credit, I will say that I think I was looking for a reason, if I'm honest with myself, to exit that relationship because my soul was ready to expand. And I think I probably would have found the smallest thing, at this point looking back. And I'm so grateful to him for all the lessons and all that he taught me about love. But ultimately, what I ended up doing was following a whim that I just wanted to go to New York City. And basically, from start to finish of this story, I think I booked a one-way flight there. I stayed for 14 days on my one friend's couch. I had 3 job offers and the keys to an apartment with a Craigslist roommate in my hand by the end of those 14 days, and I was going to be making way more than I was making as a elementary school teacher as a nanny for very high profile people. So I spent the next couple of years in New York nannying for A-list celebrities, Broadway actors, film actors, living in their homes sometimes, and wow, what a journey. So when I first finally made that move to New York, I didn't know anybody, and I was really in this place of wanting and craving physical touch that was supportive, but maybe not sexual because I was just really in a space of complete brokenness and healing.
Mhm.
And I found the acro yoga community. And within that community, there's so much. And my dear friend Jason Niemer is the co-founder of acro yoga, and he's been on the show. He just released an amazing book that everyone should go check out. But this is before I knew Jason. I fell in love with his craft, with his work, and
Mm.
it's just acro yoga has this way of creating community and inviting people in and breaking down the barriers around like what's physical touch, oh, we have to stand this far away from each other, but doing it responsibly and in a connected way and with consent. So I started to learn all these little languages and toolkits for nonviolent communication and authentic relating. And of course, somebody in that community gave me the ethical slut.
Okay.
And there are so many people that are polyamorous in the acro community. So it's like, okay, what is being poly? And I started to dive into that world, go to a lot of the LGBTQ clubs because those were the places I liked to dance, and I liked the fanfare, and I liked the divas, and I liked the dress up and the glitter and just the ridiculousness of it all. And so that really I dipped myself in that world and also experienced being in different dynamics with couples, uh, every now and then with a woman, not long term, but I remember the beauty of discovering this whole other section of my sexual being and my power and my sensuality. So I wanna loop this into what we were talking about before because I just have a feeling you're gonna know about this. One question that I'm always tracking within myself is how to stay open in my heart and shine the way that I know I want to shine on every being that I meet and still keep up enough protection that my
Mm.
barriers aren't permeable and my existence is not inviting your sexual energy or jealousy or projection. It's like, how do we hold that sweet spot of the soft and open with the you may not enter or fuck with my shit?
Yeah.
Do you have this struggle? Have you ever?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
This is what my intention was too. I was like, Allie, I also feel like I'm a host and I want to know more about you too. So
Yeah.
this is
Thanks for
so
bringing that
beautiful.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. You have such a cool dynamic story and I resonate with so much of it.
Mm.
Um, yeah, of course. I'm not shocked. We have so much more in common than I was even aware.
Mm.
Um, what a cool question. This is so perfect for my journey at this exact moment, actually,
Wow.
because I am
I'm
I
surprised.
know, right? I'm like, I am exactly asking myself the same thing right now.
Mm.
Because I think, and even going back to, authentic relating, nonviolent communication, acro, everything that you just touched on, right? Pun intended, coming back to physical touch. And I was raised by, my mother who's part Chinese. And so there's a lot of nuance that gets left at the door. And like physical touch is something that is definitely one of my love languages. And also, it's felt unsafe. It's felt very unsafe to be in the form that I am. And, I think some of the people that I've come into contact with use the terminology like a sexual leak, right? Like being leaky sexually. And I've kind of sat with them and like, what does that look like? What does that mean? And there's
Were
aspects
they
of
calling you sexually leaking? No,
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 but we're
okay.
just like referring to just like what it looks
Yeah.
like or feels like,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
And so I've been like sitting with that and an inquiry myself of going, I can feel that I'm a lot more closed than I would like to be because of feeling not safe. Because I don't want to be too, you know, um,
'Cause you've had it misinterpreted way too many
totally,
times.
totally, and
Sucks.
totally sucks. And I think what we're coming into, and I just had a beautiful conversation actually, just even I think it was day before yesterday, was about this because there's like these formats that we can ask each other of like, what is the intention here? Is there a sexual polarity between us? Do we want to um, seek that? Are we in a seeking mode? Are we in just an open dialogue with that? Is it closed? And there's like
Yes.
these ways that we can kind of communicate with each other, which sounds so pragmatic and like boring, and we want to just be
No,
like
but
in the moment, but it really is helpful.
it's so helpful.
It's so helpful.
Yes.
And I think a lot of Tulum culture as well, like, the circles that I run in and um we are coming into a more grounded approach with that, and I think it's so beautiful, and, uh, I find that I feel this opening too, um, which can be triggering for others, that are still not free from coming back into their body, and I can feel energy right away, and I'm like, yeah, this is not feeling aligned. I just really want to make sure that it's clear that this is not a sexual experience, or because it's even come up in my ceremonial work where I'm serving ceremony and then there's like a misconstrued,
Same.
and I'm going, oh man. And that took me
I
months.
had my FedEx guy use my phone number from my delivery to text me personally
What?
after delivering my FedEx freight. I got a custom bed delivered like a week after, just saying hi.
Wow. This,
Yeah, man.
this is what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just this, yeah. Like, wow. I mean, and listen, it's like, I think that this is just like the nature of, the human experience, of course. And at the same time, as we're growing, as, I always say like the collective, just to bring it all very macro. So I think that we are learning, we are coming back into um, this time in the world where there is more diversity, there is like so much more spirituality. Look at just how even just marketing is now. So I think we're in this pendulum swing. I always see it as this. And then, we are absolutely in a sexually awakened time in our culture. I mean, I don't even have TikTok, but I just, know enough to just witness the younger generations coming into their sexual power even way. I mean, geez, I wasn't 17 years old until I had started having any sort of sexual experiences. And that's considered late
Mhm.
in comparison to other than like unwarranted sexual experiences. I'll put that
Right.
out there. So there was like, of course, stuff that kind of not of course, but in my chapter, there has been stuff that was unwarranted before that, which I think is a large conversation about this. Because,
100%.
that's where I think a lot of the unsafety comes from.
Well, you talk about the moment you got your period, people started looking at you.
Mhm,
Like, imagine what that's like to feel as a young woman and how that conditions the way that you create safety for yourself when physically you
mhm,
can, and if you're an energetically sensitive being, you feel the graspiness from other people, or just the gaze that makes you feel a little bit dirty and you don't know
mhm.
why because you don't have the awareness yet, but it just feels off. I mean, that completely
Yep,
changes the way that you walk through the world until you heal it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we talk about all this, I'm thinking of a recent story from my life I'd love to share.
Mhm.
It was very powerfully healing for me. I had an old friend come visit, and this friend, he's so dear to me. We have such a great back and forth. We've tracked each other through life. I met him originally in New York. So we've been friends like maybe 7 years now. And he came to visit, and we've both gone through so much growth. I mean, when he met me, I was long haired maiden and kind of probably leaking a lot of sexual energy, but it was more so the way I would leak it would be very oblivious,
Mm,
like, "Oh, haha," like, and kind of laughing off people's sexual advances because I didn't have the tools to be like, "No, thank you," at the time. And I didn't wanna be rejected, right? I didn't wanna be rejected, and people would get mad at me if I'd be sitting at a bar alone and someone would offer to buy me a drink, and I'd say, "Oh, no, thanks, I'm good." They'd be like, "What's wrong with you? Just take a drink," or, "Why don't you smile?" And I'm like, I'm literally just trying to be here by myself. So again, I was fearful that if I was warm, people would think they were invited in, and if I was direct, that people would get angry, and I would end up creating more hurt, and that would require more energy expenditure for me to repair or just deal with people's negativity. So I ended up doing a lot of, being very laissez-faire, or letting things roll off my back, and I think it created this pattern of people feeling like I was flaky or leading them on even. Like, she's not, and then they think maybe someday I'll, because I didn't wanna say no to them because I had so many men leave my life the moment that I told them. I just wanted to be friends. And they pulled away the emotional support. And it was really, really shitty to go through. So anyway, fast forward to a couple weeks ago, have this friend from New York come visit, and he calls out the elephant in the room. And it was this delicious moment because, we had gone on a walk, we were laughing, we're, holding hands, we're just giggling about things. And then we're sitting here in my space, and he said, "So, I've always had a sexual attraction for you." And I was kind of like shy, like giddy. I was like, "Okay, we're really doing this." Because yes, I do now. And he said, "Yeah, it's no secret, and my sexual attraction for you has matured. It's different now than it is then, and who you are to me has also matured." And he said, "I just have really been reflecting on our relationship, and I want to name this energy so that we can decide what to do with it, and we can decide if it really serves us to have it here." And so we opened up this conversation about, did we want to take the sexual energy out of our friendship completely? Did we want to explore having a sexual experience together? Did we want to explore sexual partnership? Then we got into the nuance of, well, what is sensuality? And does the sensual part of our relationship serve? Because I had these fears come up where I was like, oh, but I love when we sit together and I can put my hand on your knee, or we can rub each other's shoulders, or we can walk down the street like an old married Jewish couple and just like talk. And I don't want to lose that. And especially for me, as you mirrored, there's not as many spaces as I would like that feel safe for touch. So that's part of keeping people, certain safe people in this gray zone for me, or it had been, just so that I could get my needs met. As selfish as that may sound, I don't think it is. I think it's very human. And so we got into this conversation, and he said, I would like for you to tell me what you want. And I think at this point we were just like cuddling or spooning or something. And I said, my voice like just shut down. I really had a hard time expressing to him what I wanted. And I was kind of dissociating, having a hard time feeling into my body. And he just kept kind of directing me, what is it that you would like? And actually, I think he may have expressed, he said, I have a desire to kiss you right now. Would you like to be kissed? And I said, I'm not sure I'd like to be kissed right now, because we had just opened up this conversation and I had come into the deep realization of how I keep people in that gray zone and why. And I was feeling super vulnerable. I was like, oh, I feel so compassionate for myself, and just like a little sad for the younger version of me that was so lost, that didn't have this awareness. And so I said, I don't think I would like to be kissed right now. And he just said to me, try again without the I think. And I froze because I was just feeling like, oh my gosh, if I tell him I don't want this, he's going to stop holding me right now. And that's exactly what I said to him. I said, I'm having a really hard time telling you this because my fear is when I tell you that I don't want a sexual relationship, that you're going to stop holding me, and that we're not going to be able to be close like this, or that I'll get punished for not wanting you sexually. And he said, I hear your request and I will hold you.
Wow.
And he just held me, and I just wept a little. And it was the most beautiful thing. And I love friends like this who can come and be these powerful mirrors when we try to give our power away, which is what I was doing in that moment when I said, I think I might not like to be kissed. He was like, no, try again. I said, I can't. He said, you can. And just the safety that he brought, even though I was afraid, I felt trust with him. I knew that no matter what I said, down on some deep level, I knew that he was going to receive it. That those friendships, those relationships are where the most powerful alchemy can take place. And I truly believe, I've said this before on the podcast, trust will heal the world.
Mm, what a cool story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And what's fun is this brings it back to how we know each other.
Mhm.
because we were introduced from Onken,
Mhm.
Nicholas Onken. And that's exactly kind of our journey. We've done a little
Mm.
podcasting on his podcast about this because I have that relationship with him. It is so intimate. It is like he is my best friend. He is my soulmate. And I was able to say to him in our last ceremony, I said, "You are one of the greatest loves of my life."
Mhm.
And we do not have a very sexual relationship at all. Like we have had experiences, and every time there's just like this knowing where I'm like, I just really don't want this to be it because I love you so much that I
Mhm.
just feel like that can kind of fog things
Mhm.
a bit.
Mhm.
And so we've been able to traverse this space, I mean, there was a break in between there because I got married, but I met him over 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so now to be walking with someone at such a close distance, and I told you, when before we started recording that, when we were just catching up, I told him, I was like, I want to marry you in business and I want to have a baby with you in business. And
Yeah.
then from that, let's create our dream lives.
Yeah.
And then from that, we continue to fall deeper and deeper in love. And whether that, who knows?
Right.
I don't know
Because
if
there's so
that's,
much freedom for it to be whatever it needs to when it's
yes,
time.
yes.
When it's time.
And it doesn't feel like that. And it's been same thing that you're saying, that feeling of like, are we not going to be able to take baths together still if like we
Right.
don't? And I'm like, I just want it to be like
Yeah.
we're so intimate, but it's not
Yeah.
heavily based in that at all.
Yeah.
And I tell him everything. And what I love about him is that he loves my loves. He
Mm.
photographs me in my loves, and
Mm.
that has been the coolest thing to traverse this life path with a dear beloved. And I do consider him a beloved and a counterpart. And that's what I'm learning through this polyamorous journey too, as I've been walking it, um, ever so ever so gracefully. No, not always gracefully at all. Doing my best to just try and, figure out my way through this because it just does feel now, after coming from being married in a monogamous setup with a man and, having traversed the LGBT spaces like way beyond, before my marriage, and then kind of falling back into the shame and the guilt of feeling, my parents not really accepting my truth in
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And then being like, let me just do what my parents want and I'll do the white dress and I'll marry the nice Christian worship leader because then I'll finally be accepted.
Yeah.
And I did that. And then guess what? I still hated myself.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, cool. Now I had this cloud of witnesses that watched me walk down this aisle. There was so much that went into this event. And I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
It just wasn't honest. And then as I continued to, go about the journey, it was very obvious to me. Yeah, I loved the idea of that.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't honest.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, now, being out of it and kind of landing where I am now, it's not that it's any easier, but I will say, I just feel so much more aligned in my own truth
Yeah.
that at least that is there as the anchor. But this journey is also not easy either, of just kind of being.
No.
I just wrote a whole spoken word piece actually. I have a new muse that showed up, a new
Ooh,
lover.
where can we read that?
I actually, yeah, I did it. I spoke it live and then I got nervous and I deleted it. I deleted it on Instagram,
Stop
but I
it.
need to do it again. So it's such a new wave for me to a muse showed up, a lover showed up, and all this like spoken word, and it's kind of like cheeky and funny and
Mhm.
provocative.
Mhm.
So it kind of started flowing through me, and I wrote a whole, yeah, it's called the Ode to Polyamory.
Nice.
And there's a
Oh, I
part of
wanna
it,
hear it.
yeah, it's really special. I'll read I guess I could read just like an
Yeah.
excerpt
You
from it,
should. You should. I
because I
would
think
I would love that. I think
it's
we
a
all would.
yeah. I'll read an excerpt from it because I think it'll add a little.
Mhm.
Um, okay, I'll read just a piece of it. You trigger a deep kind of wound in me, something I'm really not proud to see. Yet it's a real thing to be vulnerable and share the things that others wouldn't dare. They get lost in that blank stare because they don't care to dig deeper. Stuck and paralyzed, afraid of the grim reaper. No, no, not I. I like to fly high, sure. Yet there's this depth to me that's really key. To be a full trustee of this kind of mystery, I foresee and guarantee there will be plenty of debris. This is an ode to polyamory, and usually I'm the seemingly carefree MC.
Mhm.
I talk a big talk, but often find it hard to walk the walk.
Mm.
What you're here to teach is what you need, excuse me, what you're here to teach is what you need most to learn.
Mm.
I feel overwhelmed by deep insecurities and concerns.
Mm.
Oh, how my heart yearns to be fully accepted and respected. I don't want to be rejected, neglected, or disconnected. All these new feelings of unworthiness crowd my bald head as I lay here alone underneath my bedspread.
Mm.
This, this sometimes feels like too much bloodshed. My heart feels like it's on its deathbed. I sit and wonder if I'm being totally misled and can't help but be curious if you're off with some redhead. And then it goes on, but basically there's this one part where it says, let's see, this is the one, where's the,
I love this.
where's the part that says, oh, here it is. Okay. I just want to know that you've got my back no matter how far we veer off track.
Mm.
I don't want to wonder what kind of spell I've been put under. I want to stand sure-footed and know that will never be diluted, and what comes up will surely be transmuted. I know it's not always going to be easy breezy, and a lot of others are going to think that we're sleazy, but I am committed to fighting for this right. To be lovers of many is quite actually our birthright, and it truly can bring delight once we let go of the inner frostbite.
Wow. Snaps.
Yeah. And I'm just like, that's what it is, you know? Like I feel, again, going back to the ancients, the ancient way. We're in ancient future right now. We're kind of coming back into this awareness that the royal courts always were polyamorous.
Mm.
A lot of the tribes are polyamorous. It's not this idea of whose seed is that.
Right.
No, the children are raised by the tribe.
Right.
It took an army. It took the whole tribe to raise a vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually how I was raised, although my parents were very monogamous. I was raised on the land with a group of people. They bought a property and then we were all raised and my parents were touring magicians, you know, and so then other families would raise us when my parents were touring. So I think there's this new wave coming through us where, you know, do I desire to have children? Yeah, I'm 35. I'm about to be 36. I really desire, I guess I'm not about to be, but yeah, I'm going to be 36, you know, coming soon. And I just desire to kind of not put all this weight on one partner of like,
Right.
okay, you have to hold the whole thing. No, I have my creative partner in Onken and I have my adventure partner in this being. And so I'm really starting to see this new way that I can live my life and it not just be my partner is my end all be all and we're very codependent. We just do everything together.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more room for exploration and play and diving in. And I see now my journey is going to be where when I'm in devotion to a womb, something comes through in a different way.
When you're
new
in
softness.
devotion to a womb.
When I am in devotion to another woman, there is the yang in me, the masculine side of me softens.
Wow.
Right? And
The
so
masculine side in you softens. Wow. I love that. I mean, that's kind of a little counterintuitive, but because I would think like the masculine part would step up, but
well, that too, I guess, yeah, actually in that way too, because in romancing a woman there's such art to that. And so I love it.
Yeah.
It's my most favorite thing to romance women.
Yeah.
And it just like comes through and then I'm like, oh my gosh. And I just get
what do you like about romancing women?
I just love, I'm just such a poetic soul. So I love, you know, I know what I love to receive. So I am just always like, let me make sure there's fresh flowers and let me write the poems and let me just tell her that she's absolutely beautiful every day.
Yeah.
And I just love to be in love with women. And it's only been 3. I've dated many women, but I've only been in love with 3. And the most recent relationship really allowed me to see how much of myself is in that truth of just, but what was a problem in our relationship was I wish I could say I was gay. That would be so easy. I've been in that inquiry for a long time because it feels like almost easy to just be like, okay, I'm gay. I'm going to date women. And it's just not true. It's just not true. I'm a very fluid being. I love men and I love what comes through me also. when I'm with a man, and depending on, sometimes I source quite more effeminate men,
Right.
like that are more just balanced, I would say.
Mhm, mhm.
Not so I cannot do like super super strong masculine energy anymore. So I definitely don't call that in
Mhm,
anymore.
mhm.
Um
This is interesting because it's also like it's more about the energy
mhm,
of a person rather than whether they're a man or a woman.
100%.
'Cause I'm not attracted to every man, just like I'm not gonna be physically attracted to every woman, but when it happens, and there's
Mhm.
this energy, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, I'm surprised here," and it's kind of this delightful feeling for me that, yeah, of course, there's a physical component, but I'm curious if you think it's largely energetic as well.
100%. And it's
Yeah.
always been that for me. I remember having a crush on an older girl because I was young. I was 5 years old, and I remember having a crush on this older girl, and I went to kindergarten, and I remember going up to her. She was, we were at a K through 8 school, and she was like probably in 3rd grade or something. And I remember going up to her, and it was the first recollection of me as I've done the inner child work of going, "Oh, I wasn't just like, hey, let's go play on the playground or whatever." I was like, I went up to her and I said, "I just want you to know that I think you're beautiful." And I was
Aw.
nervous to tell her and stuff. And I
Yeah.
remember going, wow, it's been since that long ago. And I didn't actually start dating women until I was in my early 20s, because of the programming and because of the fear. Like, this was taught, do not do this.
Yeah.
Don't even go there.
Right.
And I have heard atrocious things said over me for my curiosity and
Mm.
um, my experience in that. And so from the church, right?
Yeah.
From the modern day church, and that's infiltrated a lot of our psyche. And everyone knows now, like if you hang out with me, I'm like, listen, we're all little queer. So like nature is queer.
Mm.
If you look at certain animals, they mate for life.
Mhm.
And there's certain animals that mate for just pleasure with
Right.
the same, gender or
Mhm.
same technology, call it
Mhm.
that. And I look to nature, and
And
nature is
seahorses
queer.
mate with themselves.
There you go. See?
There's all kinds of stuff going on out there,
Exactly.
and
And
all of it's beautiful.
it's so beautiful, and it's
Mm.
so multidimensional.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, we're in a, like I said earlier, just in a shift in consciousness where, I mean, a lot of people are angry, in the LGBT community. They're like, oh my gosh, they're commodifying pride. Now we have Pride Month, and
Mm.
Target and Walmart have sections, that are commodifying. And I'm like, guys, come on, you got to get more macro. This is
Mhm.
beautiful. The
Mm.
fact that this is actually happening
Yeah.
is great.
Mhm.
Where what, 20 years ago? No chance would that have happened.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we're in the shift. We're
Yeah.
going to have to give grace.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes. Let's shift the anger into
Yeah.
the celebration and keep pouring our energy there for
Yeah, I'm
sure.
encouraged. I'm like, great. I
Yeah.
walk into Target, there's like shirts about pride. I'm like, this is great. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's great. But yeah.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. I'm feeling this conversation would not be complete unless we went a little deeper into the story of your childhood. And when you first started telling me this, I think we were at Sun Life Organics getting acai bowls or something. And I was leaned over the table just enraptured by your story. My jaw was on the floor because I just your childhood is like movie. It's
Hmm.
very theatrical and wild and wonderful, and it seems like there's this rainbow cast of characters.
Mhm.
And you were telling me about some little, like, backstage moments and just waiting in the wings for things and just these spectacular spectacle peak moments that seem like they belong in that movie Big Fish. Remember that
Mhm.
movie?
Of course.
So I would love if you would, in all your storytelling glory, take as much time as you want to kind of paint some vignettes for us about these delectable, magical, juicy little moments in your childhood and what that was like to grow up being raised by two prominent magicians. Yeah,
Yeah.
traveling magicians,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. It's so funny when people ask me because it's like, it's my story. So it feels so like it just was how I
Normal.
was raised.
I know.
And then I say it and people are like, you were raised by musicians. Cool. I'm like, just like you did.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, magicians.
Yeah.
My parents were magicians,
This is not
illusionists.
something you hear. The people who put each other in a box and slice each other in half,
Literally,
those people.
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my first early childhood memories are the smell of a fog machine.
Okay, yeah.
Seeing my mother putting on her red lipstick for the stage and like the vanity lights from a
Mm.
backstage. And
Mhm.
um I mean, but by the time my mom was my age, she already had both of us and they were on one of the largest touring shows in the world.
Wow.
So
So you were touring
it's
with them as a child?
I wasn't always, but they had stints, right? So there was like
Mhm.
times that they would take off, but yeah, actually they were touring when I was younger, and so in therapy that's come up of like, oh well, that's why you have attachment issues. I'm like,
Right.
great, okay, cool. But yeah, I really honor them for being artists, wild artists that just were like, yeah, we're going to do this. And I love my mother because she's just an artist through and through. So when it comes to you name it, she makes jewelry, she makes costumes, she makes pottery. She's a painter, a mural artist. She's just an artist through and through. And same with my father. So two artists met each other and they actually met in cosmetology school. So, hair, makeup, all of that was just a part of my family dynamic. And then my dad was a TV producer and he just started kind of seeing magicians around. And I think he was always obsessed with the circus. So ever since he was little, that's kind of his journey. He just always loved the idea of the circus. He had a very, very, very abusive home, and childhood. And so I think a lot of those minds, right, they go to the dreamer. They become these wild dreamers.
Mhm.
And so that's why I think the circus arts and that kind of vibration was just very much in his essence.
Mhm.
And then he found magic and he
Mhm.
was a Libra, right? So mind, the air, the element of air is the mind. And so he was a perfect archetype. He looked like a magician. He just, as soon as he started learning it, he just took to it and it just was who he was. He is Merlin reincarnated. Like, I swear, he had this beautiful mind. And to be a magician, you have to have so many different moving parts at once. Like, you have to be 10 steps ahead of everybody. And so I think it really worked well for him. Whereas my mom was like, "You want to do what? You want to become a magician? What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Because he had this like stable career as like a TV producer. And she was like such a perfect counterpart for my father. 'Cause she was like, okay, okay, honey, I will walk with you. And
Mm.
so, yeah, she just was like, if that makes you happy, like, let's do it. And she was so beautiful. So I think they just, he was the ultimate magician for sure. But what's so cool about my mother too is um, she had her own acts. So yeah, she did pop out of boxes and she was this perfect counterpart to this extraordinary archetype. And she's very, I mean, I am such a byproduct of my parents. So as you can imagine, she's very young as well. And so she was at one point like, okay, I guess I'll do like they actually asked her, they were like, it would be perfect for you to do your own act. And at first she was really resistant. And then she was like, okay, I guess this is what's happening. And she went all in.
Mm.
And so I grew up watching her too just take the stage and name one female magician off the top of your head.
Can't.
Isn't that weird?
Mhm.
It's a very sexist culture.
Hmm.
It's a very male domineering culture. And it's honestly, it goes deeply rooted back to the days of the witches kind of being burned and
Hmm.
people being very afraid of women being
Huh.
in the
Women doing
awareness.
magic.
Me, because magic
Yeah.
there's so much more to than just the illusion of it, right?
Right.
Yes, my parents were illusionists. And my dad studied Wicca. He studied all that. He went down the rabbit
Mhm.
holes and he studied all that. And while he aligned more so with his religious faith, he let a lot of that go, but the mysticism never
Right.
left.
Mhm.
So he was a magi.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fear of women in magic
Mhm.
because what does this mean?
Mhm.
And I've found it in my own life when I say, oh, I do magic. And then people ask, well, the real kind or the art of it? And I just look at them and I go, both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
There is real magic.
Uh-huh.
Abracadabra in
Mm.
Hebrew and Aramaic, two of the most original languages, means I create as I speak. So
Mm.
we're spell casting with every word that we say. So we're all magicians. We are all the archetype of the magician.
Yes.
And So growing up, it just was a part of our family dynamic. My brother and I were a part of the show. They got us on stage and in makeup, and I dressed as a jester sometimes. My mom did clowning.
This is
I mean,
amazing.
it was such a dynamic thing. And my dad would sometimes do like, birthday parties, and then we were making the balloon animals and doing face painting. And it was such a wild journey. And, artists' lives, as we know, and this is what I look forward to kind of reimagining in my own life. There wasn't, my parents were in the church too. So they were kind of like the entertainers. So they became missionaries. So they were magician missionaries.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a really interesting kind of
What a
choice point.
fusion.
What an interesting journey. So yeah, there was a lot there. I mean, the church is always kind of weirded out by magic anyway.
Yeah.
So we were not like always we've gotten kicked out of churches a few times because my dad always knew more than the pastor. And then they were like, quit asking questions.
Right.
So, and then of course, so it's just so funny that I ended up marrying a worship leader. So I've always been a threat to the church. My dad was always a threat to the church. And then just being raised in that, performance art, it was very confusing, very conflicting as a kid. Cause I was like, okay, I know I have superpowers, but I'm being told that Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the life. And yet it says, be like him. So then, yeah, lots of different inquiry.
Right.
And so, yeah, that kind of has led me down my own path of remembering a lot of different things. But yeah, just that feeling of stage and performance and storytelling from that space. Now that my father has passed, because we were building a show before he passed on, and part of my relationship with my father was always very dynamic, and I just always wanted my parents' approval, because it's a blessing and a curse being raised by entertainers, because you grow up watching thousands of people clapping for your parents.
Right.
So then you're kind of like, and I've talked with a lot of different beings that I know, kind of like you said, in the celebrity world of, their parents are like, huge archetypes in the world. And then to be their child, it's like tough act to follow.
Yeah.
So that's been unique and also fun in certain dynamics and also challenging in others.
Yeah.
And I've kind of been in this new inquiry now that my dad, it's not been even a year yet since he's passed, of me going, am I starting House of Magi because I'm still seeking approval from my father? Is that an honest thing that I desire, to actually create these spaces for the circus arts to continue, and the ceremony and the performance and the arts and all this stuff? Do I actually want a music and a magic show? Like, is this honest?
Right.
Or is this me still just trying to fill these, lofty dreams? And as I've sat with it, it's been very interesting, because I'm like, what's better than magic?
Yeah.
What the heck am I thinking? What? Okay, what? I'm gonna go do. I was like, no, this is my legacy, and not. So I'm the only out of my four siblings, because my father has two children from prior relationships, but it's me and my brother that were raised in the magic.
Got it.
So my older siblings, of course, they didn't ever get to see the show. They never got to see the magic, really, because they were kind of disconnected. And my brother and I were raised in it. My brother has kind of become an actor, and he was Aladdin at Disney World. Like, it just is.
Yeah.
We're just such a, performance art family.
Perfect.
Can't get away from it. And I think, and he's a voiceover artist. He's just incredible. We're just such performers. And the truth is that I'm like, I love it. I love the idea of being, and my dad always told me too, he was like, you're going to be one of the most well-known magicians in the world. And so of course that haunts me a bit. And at the same time, I'm like, I'm all for it. And the visions that I see of me walking on the Met Gala and doing changing costumes like on the Met, definitely still seep into my consciousness, and I'm ready to rock and roll. And I've felt like 11 came through, because 11 can carry it.
Yeah.
And it was my state. And I told my father before he passed, I was like, because he didn't get it, especially the whole non-binary thing at all. And I was like, Dad, this is part of my stage show. This is part of it. 11 is going to carry this. I think 11 is the bridge between more women coming into magic, actually. And I have this vision of just like these beautiful goddess women around me doing it with me. And, we're going through a really hard time in our world, and there's a lot of rupture happening, and systems are breaking down. And if you look in the past, during the Great Depression, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey created the circus.
Right.
Because they wanted to, number one, create story, of course, and to create the magic, the greatest showman, right?
Right.
they wanted to create joy for
Yes.
all beings to
Mhm.
come back into that magic. And they wanted to create diversity because people are starting to look and talk the same and walk the same. So they brought actually people that had different, they were
Mm.
born different, the bearded lady or the
Yeah.
people that were very tall or the,
Yes.
small people. And like there was this camaraderie and this family. And
Yes.
so me being with the 11 toes, I've collected really epic humans, as you can
Yeah.
imagine, in
Yeah.
my story. One of my dear friends, actually, who was at my head shave ceremony, her name is Lila Hart. She has spina bifida, and she's only about 4 foot. She says she's as tall as an LA parking meter. She's a stand-up comic, and she's a tiny,
Yeah.
and she's adorable. And so
Yeah.
I've collected, she's just one to name, but I
Yeah.
have plenty of people in my life
Quite the peanut
that,
gallery. Yeah.
yes, I
Yeah.
have the cast of characters. So I
Yeah.
do see myself, and I got to hang out with Hugh Jackman once, and I just felt it. I was like, I am the greatest showman.
That's funny.
I was like, huh.
So did I.
Was that one of your clients?
No,
Oh, okay.
he was not.
Yeah, so I just felt like I was like, this is like a seed planted. I feel like I am the greatest showman.
Yeah.
So that's the dream. And I feel like I just keep sitting with it. And I've been off stage for a couple years now, just integrating into this new essence. And I just look forward to, yeah, taking on my dad's legacy. And sure,
Mm.
part of it is just wanting to carry it on. And for what better reason other than for magic and play?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You know what just came to me, and thank you so much for sharing, but this message from your father of you're going to be, one of the most well-known magicians on earth. I'm like, yeah, and you are. And you are, whether you're performing as a magician
Mhm.
on stage or whether you're spelling your spells through the world with your words and you're weaving in the way that we all are becoming the most powerful magicians on earth. So the legacy lives within you
Mhm.
in everything that you touch, abracadabra, and it lives within every single one of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, for now, the stage is off, but I've been illustrating a children's book called Twinkle Toes. So I was like, I'll start there. And it's a children's book about this little being who, yeah, has 11 toes. Of course, it's about me.
Perfect.
And they wear a top hat,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of different little fun things. And it's just been my life story, and it's just been coming through, and it's taken me, and I was writing it before my father passed, which is so epic that he got to see the early illustrations, and I'll get
Mm.
emotional just thinking about it because I'm like, he like got to see, yeah, this like
Yes.
wide-eyed child in me that was
Mm.
like, Dad, we're gonna tell the world about the magic. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I take one day at a time, and I'm like, just follow my curiosity. And I just encourage everyone that's listening, and you as well, just to follow that metaphoric white rabbit wherever it leads. It can be quite literal. I actually just had a friend text me last week, and he goes, Elle, I'm in Bali, and I just saw an actual white rabbit hopping through the street, and
Whoa.
I couldn't help but send it to you. This is incredible. So it can be quite literal, it can
Yeah.
be metaphoric, but
Mhm.
whatever way, that curiosity, that childlike awe and wonder that lives within you,
Mhm. Mhm.
that's the goal.
Mhm.
So yeah, I feel like, of course, my essence is magic. And I look forward to seeing where that can all go and whether it is a stage performance, which I do believe it is, because I've
Mhm.
been, that's the ultimate dream, and it's just dare to dream. So I'm like, okay, I've got all the builders, I've got all the best board of advisors, who else has that kind of network? So I do look forward, and I also am just in full trust and surrender and just letting it come through as it does.
Mhm.
And where it all goes, y'all just have to pay attention
Yeah, buckle
and
up.
pay really close attention because 11 is only one of the archetypes.
Perfect. I'm ready for 12. Let's meet let's meet them
There's
next.
many. There's many alter egos. So you just got to pay close attention. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
this conversation, for all of these just potent little golden nuggets of wisdom and
Mm,
magical sprinklings here for everyone that's listening. I got so much out of this. I feel like also my empathy cup feels full just from
mm,
relating with you about some of the challenges of of what our initiations were. And before we close, I want to ask you about where people who are listening that feel a deep resonance can find you. They can find um, the project that you're working on. Should there be someone listening who would be excited to fund that, help fund that in some way? And
Mhm.
if you would just want to give us a little bit more about that, and then any of your socials or websites where people can be part of your magic in the day
Yeah.
to day.
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way is just on Instagram. I am 11XX. I like to say that I'm a godex, not a goddess,
A goddess.
a godex. Yeah,
I love
a
it.
godex, because I just feel like that resonates with me. So I am 11XX, and my email is attached there. And so
Beautiful.
that's the easiest way I would imagine. And yeah, it's that on YouTube and Twitter as well. So yeah, I'm easy to find and reach out any inquiries or interest. And I'm out there. I'm out there just paving the paint, paving the way. So yeah, thank you, Hallie. Thank you for creating the space. Thank you for sitting in ceremony with me and
Mhm.
creating such a beautiful conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm honored. Thank you.
I'm honored as well. Thank you for co-creating, and we'll do this again,
Yes,
I'm sure
absolutely.
many times.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.